Today, we're gonna be teaching Zach how to properly deadlift. Now, there's arguments about how to properly deadlift and the exact form you wanna use and things that are right and things that are wrong. But there are a few key components, especially when someone's starting to deadlift, that I'm looking for. So my number one priority with Zach deadlifting is safety. So I want Zach to feel safe in the deadlift. A lot of times people have a fear surrounding it, like they're gonna hurt their lower back, or they're gonna have some severe injury, they're gonna pass out, something negative is gonna happen. So my job is to get him comfortable and feel safe in that deadlift until he understands what's happening, what's going on, and what proper technique looks like and feels like for him. Number two is gonna be his technique. Again, there is tons of argument in what good technique looks like, but we're gonna use some general advice and some general tips for him to have good technique. So again, he has a reference to work on as he builds his deadlift. So I want Zach to not only feel safe, I want his technique to be good, and with good technique becomes efficiency. So he's efficient in a deadlift. The last thing, intention/intensity. So what I'm gonna get Zach to do and focus on is to have a high level of intent every time he deadlifts that bar. Not only that, but have a high level of intensity every time he lifts that bar. As much weight off the floor as we can, or that our program says. So we have to be efficient in that. We have to see a good bar path, and we have to see that technique lend itself to efficiency. So those are gonna be our main focuses for Zach. A few key things that might be handy is one, a belt. This helps with breathing and bracing. This does not purely support the lower back on its own. You have to be able to use your core correctly to use a belt correctly. So that's one tool that's super beneficial if you know how to use it properly for a deadlift. You should be able to breathe and brace without a belt. The belt just enhances that breathing and bracing. The next thing that may be helpful, especially as you get heavier and heavier in deadlifts, is using wrist straps. Unless you're going in a powerlifting competition or you really want to focus on your grip strength, something like wrist wraps that wrap around the bar can take away the grip component with really heavier loads, allowing you to concentrate on the technique and effort purely focused on just lifting that bar rather than worrying about that bar slipping into your hand. So he's deadlifted once or twice, so he probably kind of knows what's going on, but we're gonna really dial in that technique and take him kind of from the very start of deadlifting to hopefully the end of deadlifting. So the first thing you'll notice is there's no mirrors in front of Zach. So there's no mirrors in front of him or behind him or to the sides of him. His reference point is gonna be the feeling he gets when he's deadlifting. So if he's doing a good job, it's gonna feel good. And if he's doing a bad job, he's gonna know instantly based on the feeling. So he doesn't need to rely on outside sources for that feeling. When we set up for a deadlift, whether you're conventional or sumo is gonna dictate your foot stance. Today, for Zach's sake, we're gonna worry about conventional deadlift. For most people, that's the easiest way to get into deadlifting, and it teaches the hip hinge motion, which is usually the toughest part for most people, really, really well. Where the sumo stance, there's a lot more nuance I find with that, a lot more of a technical aspect that can be a bit overwhelming when we first start. So the first thing I'm gonna get Zach to do is stand in a stance that he feels like he can jump super high to the ceiling with. So Zach, give me a really high jump. Awesome. So that's roughly where I'm gonna get Zach to start his stance. It's a good marker. Another way to do it is to basically go about hip width apart with your feet. The next thing we're gonna do with Zach is we're gonna bring him nice and close to the bar. So he's gonna stand about roughly an inch away from the bar. If you guys see here, I'll just grab this camera. Zach's feet are about hip width apart and he's standing fairly close to the bar. From there, I wanna see if Zach has the ability to hinge at his hips without his lower back changing shape. So Zach, what I want you to do is place your hands against your thighs, and I want you to push your butt back to touch the wall behind you. Good, so Zach's doing a pretty good job. He's gonna stand back to the top. And then I'm gonna ask him on this one, which muscle he feels when he hits the bottom of that hinge. So Zach, hinge over again. What's stopping you in this hinge? So the back of the leg. So he feels the hamstrings, which are a huge component in a deadlift. That's a good thing. He's on the right track. Now, Zach, I'm gonna get you to demonstrate what I call the shitting dog deadlift. Some people call it the broccoli-haired kid deadlift, which you end up looking like a dog shitting on a yard or a horseshoe. So that would look like a big rounded back position, which again, there's massive arguments around if you can have a rounded back, if you can't. I'm more so worried about his efficiency, which means we wanna establish a good spinal position, fairly neutral, and then we're gonna hinge from there to reach down to the bar. Some people have a bit of rounding. For now, Zach has demonstrated he doesn't need to, so we're not gonna worry about that. The next thing I'm gonna get you to do, you're gonna hinge at your hips just for the sake of practice. You're gonna squat, so bend your knees, and grip that bar tightly with your arms. Good. So for most people, the next thing I'll give them is I'm gonna instruct them to hold on to that bar tightly throughout this entire process. Because as soon as tension goes into the bar, the habit people have is they re-grip the bar. So I'm gonna tell Zach right now, and he might do it, he might not do it, hold on to that bar tightly. The next thing I'm gonna get Zach to do is raise his hips up until he hits my hand. Good, so he's got a high hip position. He's gonna then bring that bar back until it would be about where your shoelaces would be on your shoes. He's wearing socks, which is awesome. I don't mind when people deadlift in socks. Flat-soled shoes are really good for deadlifting. Don't wear something with an elevated heel or a runner. It's gonna feel like shit. So now he's at that point and that bar is nice and close to his shin. So that bar is nice and close to Zach's shin. He's gripping that bar nice and tightly. So now what I'm gonna get Zach to do is he's gonna create a big chest. So try and show your chest now to the wall in front of you. Good, and he's gonna drop his hips until his shins hit that bar. And then he's gonna take a breath in through his nose to fill this part of his lower back. And then press through your legs to lift that bar to the ceiling. Awesome, Zach. This is really good. Perfect. Can you do another rep just like that? So hips high to start with. Good, wrap your thumbs around that bar. Tight grip, breathe in. Sit the hips down, drive. Awesome. He's gonna hang out here and see if his grip can hold on. When people are learning a deadlift, what I want to show them as well is the downward portion or reinforce that hinge motion. When you get really good at deadlifting, which I'm gonna show you at the end, you do not have to concentrate on the eccentric portion of a deadlift, and I would actually advise you not to. But since Zach is learning, and if you're learning with lighter weight, we're gonna emphasize the eccentric portion of this lift. So Zach, on the way down, big chest. Good. What I want you to do is I want you to hinge. So we're gonna do a Romanian deadlift, hinge that weight, and then squat. Awesome. So what Zach did is he hinged at the hips until he got just below his knees, and then he squatted down. We're gonna do another set of these, and you're gonna see Zach, when he gets to that bottom position, he's set up in almost a perfect position to do another rep. So Zach, on this next one, what I want you to do is our hands are simply, we're thinking of them as hooks. So when we tighten up with that high hip position, we want to hear the click come out of the bar. So I'm gonna put my mic next to this bar. So as Zach's hips drop, you can hear that there's a click that comes out of the bar. That's called pulling the slack out of the bar. And basically it builds tension into the body and it allows us to start almost counterbalancing that weight and turns this into much more of a pressing exercise than people typically thinking of it as a pulling. We're pressing away, but to do that, we have to pull that slack out. Otherwise what you'll see, and it happens all the time, people will look like they've got a really good deadlift form going on, everything's really good, and they'll go and they grab the bar and they'll yank on it to get it up, especially when it's heavy. That eventually works as a disadvantage. Instead, we wanna build that tension, take that slack out, and then drive, and that's actually gonna take a lot of the weight or the feeling of the weight out of the bar. It's pretty uncomfortable to start with, but eventually it will. Okay, Zach, so I want you to practice that. We're gonna do 3 reps of you just trying to get the click out of the bar. So your feet are about hip width apart. You got a good grip on the bar. Awesome. So 2, the other thing I'm looking for here, when Zach goes to grab tension into that bar, you're gonna see right now his wrists are kind of kinked back. But when that tension builds into the bar, I want a straight line up and down in that wrist with a good grip, like Zach actually just demonstrated super, super well. That is the position we want. Zach, go back into that bent wrist. We do not want to be starting our deadlift resting our hands on that barbell, even with a tight grip. We want those hands to be straight. So Zach, do that again in that strong position. So on this one, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna try to get Zach to pull that slack out 3 times. You're not gonna actually deadlift anything. You're just gonna get that click and then you're gonna reset your high hips. So good tight grip and then drop your hips, chest up, get that click out of the bar. Awesome, raise your hips back up until you feel my hand. Good, so now as you lower your hips, extend your chest up, and get that click. Yeah, 2, and then 1 more time. Good. Awesome. Okay, what I want you to do now is we're gonna go for 5 reps. So I want you to get the click out, drive to the ceiling, and then I want you to reverse that movement, that eccentric movement, until you get that bar to the ground. Pause after this first rep at the ground, but don't change your position. Keep that tension. It's gonna be a little bit uncomfortable. So his feet are about hip width apart, his hips are gonna start high. Good. He's nice and close to the bar, chest up, butt down, get the click out, drive through your legs. Perfect, really nice. Now he's gonna hinge at the hips Squat, he's in a perfect position for the next rep, so he can simply breathe in, drive that bar to the top again. 2, bring it down, good. Zach, at the first initial position, I want your first move to be your butt back. Good, breath in, pause there. At the top of the deadlift, this is now where we want Zach's butt cheeks to be involved. So if you're a chick looking for a bigger butt, or you're a dude with a nice flat ass, this is where your glutes come into the equation to a big extent in terms of contraction. So now I want Zach to squeeze his ass cheeks like he's in jail and I'm about to come up behind him and scare him. I call this prison defense. Works for guys, doesn't work so good for girls. So Zach, when he gets to the top of each rep, he's gonna imagine I'm gonna come up behind him, I'm gonna poke him in the butt. So he's gonna squeeze his butt cheeks to protect himself from the predator. Okay, Zach, go for 2 more reps with the exact same principles you're using, just with that butt cheek motion at the top. Good, and then as your butt comes down, chest comes up, build that tension. Good, squeeze your butt hard. There we go. Bring it down. 1 more. 2, good. So when you're wearing a belt, Zach, what you would do, so throw this belt on. The common question is, when do I breathe and brace? So I'm not gonna go over breathing and bracing to a massive extent, because I've done that in a ton of reels, a ton of Instagram videos and YouTube videos. You guys can go find those, learn how to breathe and brace, or if you want me to help you specifically, reach out and I can do that. But people will oftentimes ask, when do I get that breath into that belt? When do I use it? There's 2 different ways to do it, depending on how big you are and how uncomfortable it is and how many reps you're going for, in my opinion. So if you're going for a 1 rep max, I don't think it's the worst idea to brace your core, breathe into that belt here, and then hold that breath and go for your 1 rep max. It's not gonna force you to hold your breath that long because it's just a single rep. Now, if you're going for 8 reps, maybe if you have the ability to, you're not super large, you can get that breath when those hips are high. So that's what I'm gonna demonstrate here. So Zach, pop down into that bar and we're gonna go through the same process. Pause when your hips are high. Good, so flatten your spine, still in that position with your hips high. So chest up, butt out, good. Straighten your legs a little bit so you can feel these hamstrings tighten up. Good, so now I'm gonna get Zach, breathe into this belt. Good, big chest, flatten the spine, hold that breath, and go through your deadlift. Big chest, big chest, big chest. Awesome, drive. Boom, and then bring it back down, and he would potentially rebreathe for the next rep. Okay, now we're gonna quickly go over lat engagement. So what is a lat? Zach's gonna turn sideways here and reach his arm out to the side. There's a muscle on Zach right here as I'm touching him. Right here, this is his lat. We want tension through that lat. When he gets set up, he's doing it automatically, which is awesome. We want to see those shoulders drop towards the hips to engage that lat to help further stabilize the spine and back muscles so our legs can be doing all the work. So Zach, you're gonna go through that and I'm gonna just video from the side here of what that lat engagement looks like. So when you get tight, when your chest becomes big, what I want you to think of, shoulders down towards the hips. So watch Zach's t-shirt here, right underneath his armpit. He's gonna drop his hips, big chest, good, there we go, perfect, drive to the ceiling. Awesome, Zach, bring it back down, let those shoulders relax, drop those shoulders down towards the hips, good, and drive. Dude, this is freaking unbelievable. I wish you were shittier at this, I could show some more mistakes. It's usually a pretty good idea to make a bit of a checklist for yourself of things that will remind you of what process you use to go through a deadlift. Especially as you get down the road, Zach is gonna have different things that either get added to this list or subtracted from this list, but this is a good template for him to start with. So the things we've marked down in here is his foot placement, his hinge, and to feel his hamstrings in that hinge, to build tension into the bar with his grip, feel tension in the hamstrings, and feel tension through his lats. Then he's gonna take a breath and brace his core before pressing to the ceiling. So I'm gonna set this board in front of Zach and he's gonna use it as a reminder and a reference for him as he goes through the deadlift. So Zach, can you say out loud as you're going through each step what it is to you?
Sure. Foot placement, hinge, feeling the hamstrings, tension, breathe, presses.
That's beautiful. He's doing a really good job. That was a really good sequence of things that he went through to make a really nice looking deadlift. The other thing about creating that sequence for yourself or writing it down on your phone as some notes, if you have a bad deadlift day and things feel off, you can always video yourself from the side, or you can go through your steps and see which one of those steps is breaking down. Maybe it's you're not building enough tension. Maybe your feet are too wide. Something like that. You can build that list and then refer to that list so you can correct your form and have really good form again whenever you deadlift. So hopefully this helps you guys with your deadlift form. It's just some simple tips, a simple walkthrough. Zach did a really good job and caught on to things really quickly. This is light for him, and we could test him at a heavier weight, which would still be sub-maximal and safe for Zach. I advise whether you're with your buddies in the gym, so dudes, this goes for you, and you're trying to outcompete your friend who's pretty strong, don't worry about that stuff until you get good and proficient with your technique. Don't worry about it. It's not worth the injuries. It's not worth being miserable deadlifting or being scared deadlifting or looking like an idiot. Do it well, learn the technique with weights that you can handle, and then progress over time. This for Zach is fairly easy. This for you might be tough, and that's perfectly fine for now. Once you learn how to deadlift properly and you learn how to do these motions, it's gonna help you everywhere in life. You're not gonna be perfect everywhere in life, but there's things that you have to pick up off the ground all the time, and sometimes it's heavy things, and the better you get at something like this, the more resilient you become outside of the gym. Hopefully these tips help you guys. If you do need more help or you have any questions, feel free to comment below or to reach out to me on Instagram or TikTok, or better yet, if you want some guidance and a program to use in your life that helps you to deadlift more weight or deadlift in a way that's a little bit more enjoyable or you feel safe doing, reach out and I can supply you with some training programs and training advice. Thanks, Zach. It's a pleasure to doing business with you. Now get out of here.